The invisible zipper is my favorite zipper. I have probably used it in like 95% of the garments I've made, which is why I'm here to teach you how to sew in an invisible zipper. My name is Juliana Zinchenko, and welcome to my fashion school. If this is your first class, I'm happy to have you, and I'm so excited you decided to enroll in my fashion school. I'm here to help you in your journey as a beginner in sewing. On this channel, you will find a ton of sewing content, from sew with me videos to sewing tutorials. But that's not all we talk about here at my fashion school. And if you've seen my video essays, you know that. If you are unfamiliar with an invisible zipper, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's invisible. The whole point of invisible zipper is to not be detectable when you're looking at a garment. I love using invisible zippers because I think it gives a garment a more clean look to it. And the thing about an invisible zipper is it's actually pretty easy to install, even though it looks like it wouldn't be. It looks like a very complicated zipper, one that you wouldn't want to get around to, which is why I'm doing it as my first zipper tutorial. Because I promise after this tutorial, you will be obsessed with invisible zippers just like I am. So I'm going to show you an invisible zipper. I put in a skirt that I sewed. And like I said, the whole point of an invisible zipper is it just looks like a seam. It doesn't even look like a zipper, you can't see it. So this is in the back of a skirt that I made. You can use invisible zippers on all different kinds of garments. You can use them on pants, skirts, dresses. I've seen them be used on knit jersey long sleeves, kind of like a half zip look. All right, class, without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell button to know when I have new videos up, like, share, comment, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok for more fashion content and much, much more. Before we begin, let's go over what we need. We're gonna need a zipper foot, polyester thread, interfacing fabric. I'm going to be using woven fabric, pins, and of course, an invisible zipper. Okay, so we got 2 pieces of fabric here. Let's pretend this is the back of a skirt that we just sewed, and the last thing we need to do is put an invisible zipper in the back. The first step is ironing on these 2 strips of interfacing. They are both 5/8 of an inch wide, which is exactly how wide the seam allowance is going to be when we sew these 2 pieces of fabric together. Here's a closer look at the interfacing. There is one side that feels a little bit rougher than the other side, and the rougher side is the fusible side. So that's the side that you want facing down. And voila, it is fused to my fabric, so it won't go anywhere. Now I'm going to mark where I want my zipper to end. I marked 7 inches down from the waist of our imaginary skirt we are sewing here. Now I'm going to put the 2 pieces of fabric right sides together, and then I'm going to take my hem ruler and put it at 5/8 of an inch and mark my seam allowance on both sides. And then we're going to sew a basting stitch, which is basically just a really long straight stitch. Then we're going to change the length back to a regular stitch, starting at the mark we made where we want the zipper to stop. And don't forget to backstitch here. I'm going to pin it before I sew, so it's all nice and secure. Then I'm going to use the lines on my throat plate as a guide to make sure I get a really good straight stitch, and I'm going to put the edge of my fabric at the 5/8 mark because that's the width of my seam allowance, and I need to put my needle all the way to the left to make sure that it is 5/8. Then I'm going to increase my stitch length to 5.0, which is the max, so that I sew a basting stitch. Then I'm going to bring it down to 3.0 so that my stitch is back to a regular straight stitch. And I'm going to back stitch 3 stitches and then finish off my seam.
Since this is where the zipper is going to stop in your garment, it will experience some stress, so I actually backstitch a few more times, as you can see in this video.
Alright, this is what it will look like when you're all finished sewing, and don't forget to cut those loose threads at the end of your stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the seam and iron it down. Now I'm just going over the mark that we made where we want our zipper to stop, and then I'm going to measure 1/2 inch at the top because this is where I'll either put in a waistband or a facing to our imaginary skirt. Now let's get out the star of the show, our invisible zipper. I'm using a 20 to 22 inch zipper. I always get a pretty long zipper because you can always shorten it to whatever length you desire. What's unique about the invisible zipper is that you only see the zipper teeth in the back. When you unzip your invisible zipper, you can see that the zipper teeth are folded in. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to flatten out that fold because we're going to sew under it. And how we do that is we're going to iron it down. This is what your zipper should look like when you're done ironing it, all nice and flat. Since we've ironed down our zipper teeth, now we can see this section that I've highlighted in gold here, and this is where we're going to sew. You know you did it right if you zip up your zipper and it stands up and closes up like a Venus flytrap. Now what we're going to do is place our zipper in our seam, and we're going to do that by putting the zipper teeth facing up. And what we're going to do is we're going to pin the zipper tape to the seam allowance. Make sure you're only grabbing the 2 layers, that is the zipper tape and the seam allowance. You don't want to catch that 3rd layer of fabric. And you want to make sure that the center of your zipper is matching up with the center of the seam. Now we're going to sew together the zipper tape and the seam allowance using a basting stitch. You can either hand sew or use your sewing machine. I'm going to use my sewing machine. I'm going to switch out my sewing machine's presser foot with a zipper foot.
This will make it easier to sew the basting stitch because my regular presser foot can get in the way.
And you don't need to make the basting stitch a different color because you're just going to end up taking it out anyway, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to make the basting stitch red. And y'all know the drill, I'm increasing my machine to 5.0 so that it is a basting stitch. This is a temporary stitch and you're going to end up taking it out anyway, so no need to try to make it super straight or perfect. And I like to sew in the middle of the zipper tape. And then make sure you backstitch at the ends of both of these basting stitches so that it doesn't unravel. Cut all your loose threads at the end, and voila, everything is secure and in place. Now I'm going to take my seam ripper and seam rip the first basting stitch that we did in the beginning. But that's all we're seam ripping. We're not seam ripping the regular stitch. We're going to stop where we backstitched and where the regular stitch starts. And this is what it should look like. Your zipper is set in place. Next, you want to unzip your zipper, and we need to get the zipper pole out of the way so we can sew in the zipper. And I'm just going to tuck in the zipper pole into the seam, and I'm going to grab it through the fabric to work it through the seam. You can use tweezers for this as well. You can put it through the seam at the end and try to grab the zipper pole and pull it through. But I've noticed when I do this, it scratches the paint off of the zipper pole, and then it just looks messy. Alright, so we got our zipper pull all the way through, and what I'm going to do is just pick one side of the zipper and flip it so it's just laying flat like this. Now you're going to sew a straight stitch close to the zipper teeth, and you're going to backstitch a little bit under that blue line we drew in the beginning. And don't forget to backstitch at the beginning of this stitch as well. I'm going to switch out my machine's presser foot with an invisible zipper foot. The zipper foot has two channels, and depending on which side of the zipper you are doing, you put the zipper teeth in one of those channels. And then you want to center your needle. For my machine, that would mean putting it at 3.5. And then you're going to start sewing. Remember that gold section that I highlighted a bit earlier in this video? That is where you want to focus on sewing. This blue mark right here is where we backstitched, so this is where the opening for the zipper is going to stop. So you're going to want to backstitch a little bit under that mark. Clip off the threads at the end, and now we're going to do the other side. This time we're putting the zipper teeth in the right channel of the invisible zipper foot. And then when I hit this part right here where the zipper teeth meet, I'm actually going to change my presser foot. So I'm going to backstitch to secure that stitch we just did, and I'm going to switch it out with a regular zipper foot. The reason I do this is because I have found it a bit tricky once the two sides of the zipper meet, and using the regular zipper foot to finish off this stitch has made it really easy. You can also use this zipper foot as well. It's thinner than the one I'm using in this video, so it probably would work better actually. So once I have the presser foot switched, I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to start at the bottom. And I'm going to start where my last stitch ended. And I'm going to position my needle and start sewing. You want to get as close as you can to the crease of that zipper teeth without getting too close that you sew into the zipper teeth. Also, just a reminder, you want to make sure you're keeping your fabric flat. You can put your needle in your fabric to make sure that it's stable, and check underneath every so often to make sure that the fabric is not bunching up or making folds, because sometimes we can get so caught up in sewing in our zipper that the fabric gets all folded underneath. And then once I hit the end of that stitch right there, I'm going to backstitch again. And this is what it will look like when you are all finished. Please excuse the loose threads I have yet to cut, but as you can see, the zipper backstitch is a little bit under our seam backstitch. Now I'm going to snip all my loose threads, and I'm going to zip my zipper back up.
And at this point, you will have a fully functioning invisible zipper. As you can see here, you cannot see the zipper unless you really tug at the fabric. We are not finished yet. We have to go in and seam rip our basting stitch. And then as you can see, the zipper is way too long, so we need to cut off the excess. And I'm going to be showing you in a second how to create a zipper stop. And then I'm going to iron my zipper down for a more crisp look. Alright, so the next thing that we have to do is create our zipper stop, and how we do this is we hand sew it. So I'm going to thread my needle and then hand sew a zipper stop, and I'm just sewing through the zipper, not the layer of fabric underneath it. Then when I'm finished, I'm going to bring the thread to the back of the zipper and tie a knot so it's secure. This is what it will look like when you're all finished, and you can also do this on the sewing machine using the zigzag stitch. How I do this is I adjust the width to 5.5 and then I put the stitch length down to 0 so that it stays put. And then you put the zipper underneath the presser foot in the center and let it do its thing. This is definitely a more messy way to do a zipper stop. It's quick and it's easy, but it just doesn't look the best. So another option is a bias bound seam, which is what I did here. I have a tutorial on how to do a bias bound seam, so you can check it out right after this video. And how I did this is I finished off just the zipper tape using a bias bound seam, and then I did the sides encasing the zipper tape and the raw edge of the seam allowance. And that is it for the invisible zipper tutorial. If you sew an invisible zipper, please tag me on social media at Juliana Zinchenko. I would love to see yours.
All right, class, that is it for the invisible zipper tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below, or you can DM me on Instagram at Juliana Zinchenko. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to know when our next lesson is.